Hey everyone! It's been about a year since I've actually posted. There are reasons for that. I'll get into it. I'm Lindy. I am a corporate tech content strategist and MFA grad and writer and very interested in creative living and deep thinking and books. So if you're interested in those things, you might like it here. A lot changed in my life last year, and I didn't have time to show up here the way that I wanted to, so I took a break. One big thing, I actually left my corporate tech job and I moved into a new space, and some family things were going on. So I apologize for the hiatus, but I'm back and I have the time and energy, and I'm going to be showing up here and on Substack weekly on Sundays. So if you want to join me, I would love to have you. And yeah, I'm really excited to be back to creating this sort of content. I love watching this sort of content from other creators and the sense of community that it creates. So I'm really excited. It's a good time of year to start something new too. Today I'm going to talk about goal setting as a writer for creative pursuits and career, and the way that I'm framing that this year. I'm doing something a little different. I did a video like this last year, you might remember. So to start off, I don't necessarily love to set hard and fast concrete goals at the new year. I like to do that sort of on a quarterly basis, but at the new year, I do like to assess some really broad, high-level goals. Maybe like 4, 5, or 6, keep the list kind of light, and use that more of a way to understand what I want to focus on and orient towards in the new year. And I actually kind of start doing this in September-ish, start thinking about it, start looking back at the year way before January 1st. I think there's something about the autumn that just feels like a natural reset, and then in January kind of write it down and make it more of a solid plan. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of where my mind is at and how I typically do things. I know everyone has different ways that they like to approach this stuff. My way might not be the best way for you, but maybe it'll give you an idea that could work for you. Take what works for you. Some of you might remember, if you watched my video about this from last year, about writing goals for the year as a writer, I was really focused at the time on finishing a first draft of my book. I did that. I got it done. That means my goals for the next year are a little bit different. I changed things up based on just what's going on with leaving my corporate job and moving and just kind of reassessing what I'm doing and where I want to put my focus and energy in the world. My overarching theme, I guess, for this upcoming year of 2026 is purpose. And again, where I want to put my creative energy and my skill sets that I've already built. And I think that what I've been thinking about a lot is I would like that to be more community oriented, which is partly why I am here again with you on YouTube. YouTube and Substack are, to me, a really great way to engage with like-minded people that like to learn the same sorts of things and create some community. One of my goals that I am focusing on in the new year is to show up here, like I mentioned, and on Substack weekly. I'll be on Instagram too, but a little bit less. I like YouTube and Substack better for community. So yeah, if you want to follow here, hit subscribe. If you want to check out my Substack or Instagram, the links are below in the description. Another fun, exciting thing, you might be wondering what I'm doing for work in the meantime. I have some small business ideas actually that I'm working on. I'd love to talk about that and what that process is like, and maybe let you follow along a little bit for the ride as I actually move forward with one or two of those ideas. So I don't want to get too in the weeds on that in this video, but that's something that I'd be happy to talk more about if you all are interested. I want to be more present in my local community. I want to be more engaged. I have a lot of marketing and management skills, and I would rather put those to use in my local community than in the corporate world. That's just a decision that I was able to make and wanted to make for myself. So yeah, happy to share more about that process. If you're interested or have any questions, drop it in the comments or reach out to me on my email you can find on my website. The link for that is also below. That's one of my other goals. So there's two. A third one, this might sound like a lot. I do have some ways of dealing with it and with some time management things I have. So this isn't as crazy as it sounds, but I did apply for a PhD program for a literary and cultural studies degree. It has a pretty low acceptance rate. It's really competitive. I'm anticipating that I won't get in, but I did apply. It would start next September. I would love to put more energy towards studying more deeply and have the time and space for that. I'll share more details and get into that if I get in. Doing that application process has taken up a lot of the autumn for me. I wrote a critical analysis for it that was really fun about Western Gothic nonfiction written by women specifically. So I'd love to do a video about that if you're interested. It was really fun. I enjoyed researching and doing the reading and writing that. Yeah, that got me more pumped and excited about the potential of a PhD program. We'll see. Those are kind of the three main things that I'm focusing on a lot right now. Along with the being more community oriented, this isn't necessarily so much writing or career focused, but I would love to find somewhere in the community where I can donate my time or my skill set. I want to do more volunteer work as well. That might involve, writing in some capacity. I know there are certain programs that do that, but it doesn't have to be that. So I'm on the lookout for something like that to get more involved with as well. That's a goal for the year for me. I won't be hearing back about the PhD program until late February, early March. In the meantime, I signed up for a 3-month journalism course. I don't know if I've shared that before here, but I was a journalist in college for a local newspaper, and I really loved doing that sort of work. I just thought this short course would be a good way to spend my time and maybe get more involved in all of that again. And then of course, creative work in general. I'm not going to go hard on a book length project this year. I do have a fiction project kind of on my mind in the periphery that I want to flesh out a little more and then maybe start writing more seriously in 2027 or when I have more time. I know book projects are always a long game. My last one took several years. So I think that in relation to that, this year is just more about ideating and developing the idea so that I can start writing more seriously in the near future. I would love to write more essays and pitch them or just write them on my Substack. I love doing cultural analysis through a literary lens. I love talking about books, as you know. Those are my overarching broad focuses that I will be honing in on this year. The new thing that I really want to talk about that I decided to do for my yearly goal setting in relation to my writing and career is I created a personal curriculum. This is something that's been going around online. It's a trend, definitely not a new idea by me, but it just seemed like a great way to bring an academic sort of framework to my personal life. I think it's really cool. Also, if I don't get into the PhD program, it's something that I just love to apply because I love to nerd out and really get specific with and intentional with what I'm reading. It seems like a great way to do that. I created a sort of curriculum outline. I was inspired by Glutenberg Bible here on YouTube. She's one of my favorite creators. So I kind of took inspiration from some of her outline and created one for myself that relates to the goals that I have for the year. So what I'm reading can support it. I just did this September through June because, like I said, I don't like to plan too concretely, too far ahead. I like to leave some space to grow and evolve what I'm thinking about and interested in and focusing on. Let's talk about the books. I think most of us here, if you're here, you probably love books too. So I'm going to talk about the books that I'll be reading that are going to support my goals for the year. I also have a link to my curriculum that I created down below if you want to check that out. I did 2 books for each month. I wrote out 3 questions that I want to have on my mind as I'm reading those books for each month. And then I created a little project for myself at the end of each month. I am a big believer that it's important to apply what you're learning, even if you're reading fiction, to your actual life. The projects are ways of getting me to do that and prioritize it. So yeah, you can check that out down below. It also has the books listed that I'm reading for each month that I'm going to cover now. First though, I wanted to share with you that there are 3 books that I read consistently. I have for the past 2 years. This will be the 3rd year. I spend about half an hour every morning. I make my coffee and I sit and I read an excerpt from each of these 3 books. And it's just a cool way to set your day. And I find myself thinking about what I read throughout the day. I try to find little ways to apply it. These are the 3 books that I have found that I like to do this with. I know it's something a lot of people do. If you have a book that you like to do this with, share it in the comments, because I would love to see what you're all reading and what you love, and maybe I'll change it up a little bit. As of right now, 3rd year going, The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. It's excerpts from the 5 really dense books that he's written, little lessons and things, and you'll see they're really pretty short. They're each about a page. You can get through it pretty quickly. I think this year I'm going to try to annotate all of the books that I'm reading in this sort of capacity. I'm not someone that's ever really been into annotating. I know that might sound wild. I feel like most people are. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's just not something I've done much of, and I would like to. So maybe I'll share with you in another video or something how I decide to go about that. The second one is This Is Strategy by Seth Godin. He's a business leader. He's really smart. I started reading this for my content tech strategy background, but I find a lot of this applies to my creative work and my life as well. And these are also quite short. As you can see, each one starts with the bolded heading. So they're just really short little things that you can read quickly. And then last but definitely not least, I mean, if I had to choose out of the 3, this book will always be in my routine. I think it's incredible. The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Highly recommend. Great gift also if you need to go grab a last minute gift for someone. It's so good. These are a little bit longer, and it's the one I end with it so that I can spend a little more time with it and not feel rushed. They're each like 2 or 3 pages. You can see. It's just notes on the creative process he's learned throughout his time working. And yeah, so that's another thing that I am bringing to my year again. And then for my curriculum, what I'm going to be reading each month, I tried to pair the 2 books in a way that they had a similar theme as well for each month. So each month kind of has a theme that you'll notice if you go click on that curriculum that I shared, the link below. So for January, I chose novel inspiration as my theme. Again, focusing on fleshing out that fiction idea I have a little bit more. I want to write about my experience growing up in a really Orthodox Mormon community in northern Utah through the lens of a group of female friends. So that's kind of my rough idea, and I want to refine that a lot. So the first book that I'm going to reread actually is The Group by Mary McCarthy. It was published in 1963 and really culturally popular at the time. There was a movie made that I have not seen yet. I'll probably watch later in the year as well. It's about a group of friends, and it follows them from when they graduate from college through 7 years after. And it's about their relationships and career and kind of how they all get disillusioned in different ways with individualism and the modern world. I liked it the first time I read it. I think it's a good one related to what I'm trying to write about as well. The second one is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I think I'm saying that right. So interesting thing, this book it's written under a pseudonym, so nobody knows actually who Elena Ferrante really is. She's an Italian writer, and it was voted the #1 best book of the century by the New York Times. So it's been on my TBR for a while, on my radar. It's about 2 lifelong friends growing up in Italy. Similar friendship themes. It explores gender and class, which I would also like to do a little bit of. So yeah, I think when you have a book idea or something that you want to write about, it can be helpful to see how other authors have handled it and done it. You can decide if you want to do it differently, or maybe draw some inspiration, loosely of course. It helps to know what's been written about before so you can add something different to the conversation too. So that's going to be my January reading. In February, I have the theme of overlapping landscapes and memoir. I love books that are rooted in place. I love narrative nonfiction. That's what I focused on for my MFA. One of these is a reread, and it's Refuge by Terry Tempest Williams. It's about the flooding of the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge in the 1980s. This is basically right where I grew up. I grew up going to this refuge. I went there a few months ago. It's beautiful. The Bear River is a tributary of the Great Salt Lake, which, in the 80s, she's talking about it flooding. And right now we're dealing with a crisis. It's drying up. So that's an interesting parallel and environmental issue here in the state of Utah. She does kind of a dual narrative where she explores that specifically in her relationship with the refuge, along with her mother's battle with cancer and death. Terry Tempest Williams, like me, was raised Mormon, but is not Mormon any longer, is from what I understand anyways. I'm not. I think she's not. But she's a great theological thinker. I believe she was teaching for a while at the Harvard Divinity School. She's incredible. And yeah, I'm excited to reread this, especially within the context, like I said, of what's going on currently. Thin Places by Carrie Doherty. She's a writer from Northern Ireland, and she is writing about natural history, and place, and her experiences growing up during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And I was just in Ireland and Northern Ireland in October, so that's another reason I picked this one. It overlaps with my interests and a place that I would love to keep learning more about. Both kind of deal with, spirituality, history, natural history, the environment, and where places kind of overlap as well. And I think that stories like that are always very interesting. In March, I chose the theme of making meaning of it all. This is a partial reread. I didn't make it all the way through the last time, but The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr. And it gets into, the science of how stories impact us individually and collectively, why they matter, why they're so central to our humanity. I'm excited to get through the rest of it. The second one for March is a reread. It's one of my all-time favorite books that I would recommend to anyone, anytime, especially if you're a writer. Far Away Nearby by Rebecca Solnit. Love this book so much. I read it for the first time 10 years ago during my MFA, and I haven't really revisited it in depth since. So it felt like a good time for a reread. She explores a lot of the stories that shaped her inner world and her thought processes as a writer, and she uses them to make sense of some things that she is going through and dealing with at the time that she's writing it. Stories like fairy tales, and Frankenstein is one that's in there, so it's more widely known pieces of literature and art, and yeah, it's such a good read. For April, I chose the theme of finding purpose, since that ties into my theme for the whole year. I chose this work of fiction called Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. It's translated from Italian, and it was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year. I picked it up kind of on a whim at one of the indie bookstores here in Salt Lake, and I'm going to Italy in May. So My Brilliant Friend is by an Italian writer. This is by an Italian writer. It seemed like a good tie-in to something else going on this year in my life. I'm really excited. It's about a couple who are digital creatives, and they have created what they think is a very vibrant life for themselves in Berlin. But eventually over time, they find themselves wondering how it became kind of dull. And it's about them waking up to themselves, I guess, and wondering how they got where they are and if they want to stay there and what they want to change. So it seems like, about being intentional with life and finding purpose. The other book for April is Waterwood and Wild Things by Hannah Kirshner. She is a food stylist. It's about her time living in a small town in Japan and focuses on local artisans making things by hand and the way that the food is grown and made. It's just really about slow, intentional living with purpose as well. And again, a great immersive place-based book from what I can tell, which I always am interested in. So I'm excited about this one as well. The theme I picked for May is beginnings after a big ending, and I chose The Crane Wife by C.J. Hauser. C.J. called off her wedding and about a little over a week later went to Texas to study cranes, and it's a memoir and essays. So through the essays, she explores how to leave room for the unexpected in life instead of just always following the pre-written scripts that we're all kind of given in society and in our different cultures. Sometimes they just don't fit for certain people or certain situations, and leaving room for possibility for other things, and also how to not lose yourself in a relationship. So the other one for May is The Mobius Book by Catherine Lacey. From what I've read and can understand, it started out after she went through a really rough breakup, and she was kind of taking notes about what she was experiencing, and then it evolved into a fiction project. And she started exploring faith, how to trust again after your trust has been broken in a really difficult way. And it parallels with an experience that she had when she was a teenager and lost her faith in God. It's a book about finding redemption in relationships in all their forms, especially platonic and narrative itself. And then finally for June, I chose the theme of getting philosophical. And that ties again into just purpose and where I want to focus in life. I think that great stories all kind of have a philosophical foundation. And as a writer, I'm interested in that, about all of the ideas that are out there and theories behind them. I also think it's really important and great to, read something different, maybe some ideas that counter some of your long-held beliefs and ideas, and just kind of reassess things and challenge yourself once in a while. So the first one I have for that is Age of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Montell. I absolutely loved her book Cultish. I love the way her mind works, so I'm excited to see what connections she's making in this one. She argues that in our modern age, we're all oversaturated with information and the way that our brains process things. Our coping mechanisms are just overloaded, and that ramps up the dial on the things that we overthink about or are irrational about. So I think that's going to be a really good one. And then I got this one several months ago, and it's been on my TBR list, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But All Things Are Full of Gods by David Bentley Hart. He's a philosopher, an essayist. He also writes fiction. In this book, he really digs into human consciousness, and he does it in an interesting way through a fictional lens, where he has a group of aging Greek gods together discussing these ideas in a garden, and that's the lens through which he explores human consciousness and how language and art and the structures of the mind all point to a higher intelligence, I guess. I've lately been really interested in consciousness and non-local consciousness and all of the science that's emerging around that. It's been really fascinating to me. So this is kind of a parallel, different line of thought, but related. I also just read Dan Brown's new novel, which is about non-local consciousness. He brings in to his books, if you're not familiar with, I'm sure most of you have heard of like the Da Vinci Code and stuff, but he brings in real art and philosophy and history and science to his books, and then fictionalizes a lot of it and makes it really fun and entertaining. They're really fun, fast reads. I've read all his books. I started like in junior high, I think, with Digital Fortress, but I was excited when his new novel came out this year, and I actually just finished it. It was really fun. But yeah, anything consciousness, like place-based anything, and narrative nonfiction, I'm just really drawn to it and fascinated by it. So those books will be good for June. So that's the new element that I'm bringing to my yearly goal setting this year. I'll do some quarterly, more concrete goal setting that tie to those higher things that I want to focus on and what I'm reading. If you're interested in it, I could do a video about that to walk you through the process and share more about that. I'm excited about the personal curriculum idea, and I think it's so fun, and I've loved seeing what other people are doing for theirs. So if you have one or you're thinking about doing one, share that in the comments. Like I said earlier, if you have any questions or things that you'd like me to talk more about, share that or reach out to me directly. I'm excited to be back here on YouTube and doing this again more regularly. I hope you have a great week. Bye.